So Empower Delivery is an end-to-end order to fulfillment platform. So we do everything from taking in the orders via kiosk, first-party ordering, third-party order aggregation, however it might get into the system. We then do that conductor piece, that order management system, producing it through the kitchen and maximizing throughput in the kitchen. And then going out the back via fulfillment. We enable restaurants to have their own dedicated on-demand delivery fleets. So if they don't want to go through a third party and they want to do it themselves, they can do it with us.
This episode made possible by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO of Empower Delivery and co-author of Delivering the Digital Restaurant, The Path to Digital Maturity, Meredith Sandland. Meredith, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Unstoppable.
I'm psyched to be here. This is the second time we've had you on the show. The first time it was remotely. It was 2021. We published your episode in November of 2021. That was episode 824. So if you want to go back and listen to that episode, we cover Meredith's first book, The Digital Restaurant, Roadmap to the Future of Food. And your new book, which was only released a year after, right? About a year and a half, 2 years apart.
Yeah.
We're going to be covering your second book today, Delivering the Digital Restaurant, The Path to Digital Maturity. I can't wait to dive in. You're a great first guest. I know you're going to be a fantastic second guest. But first, we got to get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. And before you hit us with that quote, pull that mic and tip it up for me.
Be intentional.
Be intentional. I love that. Why is that your quote today?
Well, I find that with so many demands on our attention, and you and I were talking before the podcast started about how, in particular, just a few pieces of technology are constantly, sending you notifications, texts, phone calls, emails, trying to get you to do different things, respond in different ways, whether it's a tool that you need for work or something that's just fun like social media. And I find that I do better when I am intentional and I choose what am I going to do for the next half hour, day, rather than respond to all of those incoming demands on my attention.
Right. I mean, it's so easy. There's so much noise today. It's so easy to be distracted. And I think one of the other things that we're going to get into this as we move forward, trying to figure out how to be intentional with our restaurants, how to evolve and be ready for the future. I think it can be there's even more distraction out there. Like which platform to go with? What do I really need? What's snake oil? Like it's so overwhelming for a restaurant owner. So would you say it's harder than ever today to be intentional?
I think absolutely, right? I mean, one of the great and amazing things about what Carl and I call the SaaSification of restaurant software is that there are so many different things available and things that 10 years ago weren't, right? I remember back when I was at Taco Bell as the chief development officer of Taco Bell, we spent millions of dollars building custom things that only we could have because we made them.
Right.
And now many of those same things, or at least things very similar to them, are available to everyone for a small monthly fee. That's absolutely incredible.
It is incredible. You forget how far we've come.
Yes. Just because there are so many amazing options out there, that is what also then becomes tricky, right? How do you pick the ones you need and that are most important to your business?
Right. And that's really a lot of what drives what I do and why I'm living this lifestyle of really trying to let word of mouth dictate who I talk to and who I make an example of, because it's so noisy and it's really easy to get in front of people if you know how to market. It's a weird slippery slope out there, but we're going to dive into a lot today. So the first time I had you on the show was 2021. Mm-hmm. As we're recording this, it is July of 2024. Crazy to think how fast time goes. This is going to be episode 1112. So to give a little context, 300 episodes ago. What has changed in the world of delivery technology, like in that period of time?
So much. Well, you'll remember in 2021, we were still in the on again, off again COVID phases of not really being sure what we were allowed to do and how to do it. People were still very much nervous about going out, eating a lot at home, getting a lot of delivery. And they were in what Carl and I called at that time, restaurants were making decisions out of a state of emergency.
Yes.
Oftentimes going online for the very first time, putting their menus online for the very first time, doing crazy things like having
a matter of survival.
Yeah, having PDF menus, right? And I'll refer to Carl a lot during this. He's my co-author on the book. Carl and I always laugh that, there'll be articles coming out saying the death of QR codes. Americans hate QR. Well, nobody hates QR codes. What they hate is terrible PDF menus that when the QR code links to that, they're frustrated, right? But if the QR code goes to somewhere great, it's not the QR code's fault, right?
Right.
And certainly 2021, we were still in that phase of restaurants making emergency decisions to stay alive and survive. They hadn't quite yet gotten to a point where they could step back and consider, okay, how do I really want to show up in the world? And guess what? Be intentional. And I think we are now at that place, right, where restaurants can think about.
The dust has kind of settled a little bit. A lot of the noise, there's clarity in all the noise. Like there's some platforms are getting a loudspeaker to speak out of, to say, like, we are the option, right? But I am curious. Going back to 2021, 2020. There was all this hype, all this excitement about the future of restaurants, ghost kitchens, virtual kitchens, cloud kitchens. 3 years has gone by, almost 3 years. What of all that noise, all that hype, all that excitement is ringing true today? What patterns have you seen to this point?
Well, I believe that there's a demand in America for more modern brands, restaurant brands that connect with people on a emotional and identity level, right? In our first book, we called this Food as Identity. And there is this yearning for these more modern brands that people eat based on how they believe, right? Food as belief. And when I have a certain set of food beliefs, it turns out I will pay more to eat that way. I will be more loyal to that brand. I will eat there more consistently, more frequently. And I think that's certainly what we see with restaurant brands like Sweetgreen or Chipotle or Cava, where because consumers believe that a brand is better for them, whether or not it actually is, maybe is a separate issue.
Right.
But the fact that people...
I'm happy you called it an issue.
the fact that people believe that it is, they're very dedicated to those brands. And I think there will be more and more and more of them. So how does this relate back to ghost kitchens and the questions you asked?
But I want to make sure I understand more and more of them clearly being brands
based on food beliefs.
Got it.
Right? Brands that connect with you because that's how you want to eat. That's what you want to tell the world about yourself, about what you value.
Yeah. And I will say that tracks well with the other things I've learned, but I know you wanted to finish your thought, so keep going.
Yeah. So how does that relate to ghost kitchens and delivery and just, I'll call it alternative modes of access? Think about McDonald's, the largest, most successful restaurant company in the United States, thousands and thousands and thousands of locations. And everyone says, oh, well, they're really a real estate company, right? They own all this real estate and they rent it out to their franchisees. If you wanted to recreate that real estate today, you couldn't. You could not get those street corners. It would be impossible, first of all, to procure them. And second of all, even if you could actually access them, to pay for them, right? They would be so expensive in today's dollars. There just is not that much land left in America to have all those street corners.
Is there a number that has accumulated all of the value of property that McDonald's owns to this day?
I'm sure.
And how much it's appreciated over time, how much money they've just made on real estate over the past 50 years?
I am sure there's some hedge fund person out there or activist investor who's
calculated
calculated
that number.
Yeah, but it's very impressive. So if you say, okay, there's this huge consumer demand for a different way of eating that's based on food beliefs, but it's actually impossible to recreate the real estate that a McDonald's or an Applebee's has.
What's the new real estate?
How do you make that work?
Yeah.
Right? And that, I think, leads necessarily to new modes of distribution, new channels for consumers to engage with restaurants. We've seen a rise in delivery. I think that is tapering off because of some issues with delivery that we can come back to. But delivery happened for a reason. And it happened, I think, primarily because people wanted to access those more fast casual brands that were closer to their food beliefs, but didn't have a drive-through, weren't ubiquitous, easily available. easy to procure.
Yeah. I mean, in the past 3 years, what I've noticed, I think there was a lot of hype, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety of if I don't make these changes in my restaurant around the tech stack, so you can meet people through different channels, the words you use. But also there was like all this hype around ghost kitchens and digital brands. And one thing I think you did really well in the book is you describe the difference between a ghost kitchen and what's the other there's so many different, not ghost kitchen, and what's the other one you use?
Virtual brand.
Thank you. So what exactly, how do you decipher between those two things?
So I think of a ghost kitchen as the hardware, the place where a thing happens. So a ghost kitchen would be either a kitchen that has a collection of brands inside of it, or maybe it's an existing restaurant that has brands added on top of it. Or possibly it is a facility that's full of 20 different kitchens inside of it.
That do delivery only.
It is the hardware. They may or may not do delivery only, and we'll come back to that. But it is a facility. It's a hardware. It's a place. The virtual brands literally are like the software. They're running on top of that hardware, and they could be changed in and out at any time. There could be lots of them, a few of them running on that hardware. And then the really confusing thing is when you have a virtual brand operating inside of an existing restaurant, and that we would call host kitchen.
So a virtual kitchen is basically the brand of a concept that can be moved anywhere.
Exactly.
Got it. I think that is a really great way to look at it. So a lot of hype back 3 years ago about the future of restaurants being all digital, all ghost kitchens, all virtual kitchens. Mr. Beast has, his own burger now. Like, how are we supposed to compete with anybody who has an influence, has a presence, has a social following? They now have their own restaurant. And you look at today, we have, Big Chicken. Shaquille O'Neal has a concept. I just interviewed the CEO and co-founder of Heart House. I had Troy Hooper on the show. So like it's almost like, I guess what the question is, do you think it played out like everybody thought it was going to play out, or did ghost kitchens and virtual kitchens lose a little steam?
Well, certainly they did not live up to the hype of the time. I think that's a pretty natural phase in innovation where you have just an absolute blossom of innovation, a bunch of money pouring into an idea, and then it is quite natural for the dust to settle and the things that truly work to emerge as winners. And I think we are starting to see that. There's a lot of talk about, are ghost kitchens dead? What have we learned from all of this? Carl and I were at Food on Demand this year in May. I hosted a panel.
Where is that?
Food on Demand is a conference in Las Vegas.
Oh, cool.
And I hosted a panel on ghost brands, ghost kitchens and virtual brands, and kind of what we've learned. And the fascinating thing to me was that there were all these people in the audience who were just quietly doing the work. They were running ghost kitchens. They were running virtual brands. Day in, day out, they were just operating and making it happen. And these businesses are working. And we're starting to see funding come back into the space with some brands that are working really, really well. And those high profile things that didn't work so well, right? Mr. Beast being one of them.
So that didn't work. That was going to be my question. Like, are these brands
it's still out there? Yeah, it's still out there for sure. But obviously, they got into a big public tiff between VDC and Mr. Beast. And it didn't pan out the way that everyone thought, right? People were afraid. I think restaurant people thought, gosh, how can I compete with someone?
It's already competitive enough.
Yeah.
Right?
How can I compete with someone who has such a huge following, such a brand name, who can literally just say, hey, followers, go do this. And they do it.
Right. Cult following.
Yeah. And it is a super strong brand. But ultimately, you also have to execute, right? And in a restaurant, even if you don't have that physical space where maintenance and cleanliness and kind of the interactions and hospitality and those things come into play, even if you're doing it all digitally and via delivery, you still have to be fast. You still have to be accurate. You still have to have high quality. You still have to have consistency. And that was where those virtual brands kind of fell down a little bit, right?
So the challenge was with basically scaling the culture, the standards, the consistency across all virtual brands.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that would have been a challenge?
No one in restaurants ever would have guessed.
Right. So And then smaller. Like, so I just had Sean. I feel comfortable talking about this because we discussed it. Sean Walchef was on the show when I was back out here, and he was talking about his virtual brands. I guess it would be in your definition, it's a virtual brand because it's his Cali Comfort. I think it's just Cali Barbecue now.
Yep.
So he had his digital brands. He took his original brand and he wanted to be the Amazon of barbecue, right? And I think he closed some of his locations, the digital brands. So it's happening on a smaller scale too, not just with the Mr. Beast.
Yeah, well, there I think it's something different. Not necessarily consistency because Sean controls all the brands, and so he's able to control the consistency of each one. And he has very few locations that he personally and his team are going to. They're not trying to do it in an expanded way. But for brands like that, and I won't speak specifically to Sean's situation.
Well, I'll say what he said.
Yeah, tell me what he said.
What he said was consumer demand.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So that's exactly where I was headed. I think then you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And if you have 15 different brands and you're trying to support all 15 of them, it's hard enough. Any restaurant person will tell you it's hard enough to do marketing to drive demand for a single brand.
Right.
Now you split those marketing dollars across 15 different brands. That's pretty tricky, right? And you split your time and attention across those 15 different brands. You've got your culinary person trying to do 15 different LTOs. It's very, very complex. So while it can work, I think, in certain settings, in others it can be very difficult. So then that begs the question, maybe, where does it work? And what have we seen? Because you remember I said at the Food on Demand conference, there are all these people in the audience who are just quietly doing the thing.
Yeah, so where does it work? What have we seen? Before you get into that, what do you think in terms of consumer demand, what is going on there? Is it just that there's no consumer habit associated with, like if you could, like, not necessarily just relative to what Sean experienced, but like other virtual brands that have experienced the same challenge of just consumer demand, like what seems to be the issue? Where's the disconnect?
Well, I think part of it is that the marketplaces themselves have changed, right? So most of the virtual brands were never virtual brands with a first party ordering first approach, right? They were all virtual brands that were riding on top of the marketplaces.
First party ordering first.
Exactly. So let's make up a brand. Let's say we've got the Alphabet brand, and they've got brands A, B, and C. And they did not have A.com, B.com, and C.com where they were driving first-party orders directly on their own website, right? Instead, they had A brand up on DoorDash, A brand up on Uber, B brand up on DoorDash, right? Does that make sense?
So ABC brand, that's the mother company.
Mm-hmm.
They have 3 brands underneath them, A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. I got that far. So that's basically like if I were to start a brand, Unstoppable, and then I have like Unstoppable Pizza, Unstoppable Pasta, Unstoppable Sushi.
Correct.
Okay.
You probably went too far there. But yes, so you could, in your case, have unstoppablepizza.com. Okay. And have first party ordering come to you, right? But most of these brands were not constructed that way. Most of them had Unstoppable Pizza as a listing on DoorDash or on Uber, right? And so one of the things that's changed in the last few years is that the marketplaces themselves have changed.
Okay.
Right?
I want to make sure I'm following up to this point. So basically, they didn't have a platform, a home base. Mm-hmm. So they were relying strictly on third-party markets to drive revenue to their POS.
Correct.
So they didn't have a way to capture the relationships, a platform.
Correct. So they weren't getting the data. They couldn't remarket to these people. But worse, they were totally dependent on whatever the marketplaces decided to do with the algorithm. So if DoorDash or Uber decided, we don't like virtual brands, which they did, and they got rid of a whole bunch of them. Or if they decide, we're going to feature brands that pay us advertising dollars, which they've done in the last, 2 to 3 years. That's become pretty significant. Yeah. As they make those changes, a brand that was designed to capitalize on the search engine optimization within those marketplaces of 4 years ago isn't going to work as well today, right? So either these brands have to keep up their innovation to match what the marketplaces are doing and how they're deciding what to serve up to consumers, or they're going to see their demand fall off.
So before I took you on this this parallel train of thought, was this where you were going with your original train of thought of like the marketplace is changing?
Yes, the marketplace is changing for sure. That is a huge piece of it. And so if you look at someone who has their A brand, B brand, and C brand, now they have to decide, okay, do I want to support all three of these brands on the marketplaces with ad dollars, or do I want to focus my ad dollars on just my strongest brand? Or do I maybe want to spend my money designing a first party tech stack to get consumers into my own system?
First party tech stack, meaning like, when you say first party, you're talking about like your OG restaurant?
Meaning the consumers are coming direct to me.
Okay.
Online still, but they're coming directly to my website, my app. They're not going through a marketplace.
Got it.
But again, all of these things cost money. So
Got
you
it.
have to decide as a restaurant, do I want to spend my money on first party? Do I want to spend it on 3 brands, on 6 brands, on 1 brand? And I think the place that we've gotten to is that a lot of restaurants have concluded it probably makes sense to spend it on fewer brands, to focus those dollars, maybe even spend it on fewer platforms, right? They might be going exclusive with Uber or DoorDash, and certainly spending more money on their own first party systems. So we see a lot of growth in things like online ordering, apps, loyalty programs, things like that.
Got it. So you highlighted something that I was hoping would come out of today's conversation at some point, which was this idea of the marketplace is changing, right? And what I mean by that is the marketplace is, we think of the marketplace as like a town, right? Or like a
food court,
community, or like
a mall,
a market, right? But the marketplace is literally a company now. Like DoorDash is a marketplace. Uber Eats is a marketplace. And what scares me, what my concern is in these directions we're going kind of blindly, just generally speaking, is that these giant companies are getting more and more control over consumer behavior, and these marketplaces are controlling the entire market. You know what I'm saying? And like, I just think that we're so close to it. The analogy I like to use is it's like we all live in Manhattan, right? We're on the island, but if we were born there, we never left there, and we didn't have a map or a globe, we wouldn't know we're living on an island. We're just there. But you get 30,000 feet up, you can clearly see that that's an island. We're all on this island, and we don't know we're on the island, and the island is this technology, i.e. Amazon, Google, Meta, Uber Eats, DoorDash. Like, we exist within this technology, but we're in the technology that we don't realize that there's another option. And we're being controlled and manipulated by these giant organizations because they have our data.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll do you one better. If you think about your Amazon experience, right? You go on to Amazon, it's personalized to you. The things that are recommended to you are based on your past purchasing behavior. So they are either things that you've bought before, things that are related to what you've bought before, or things that other people who've bought what you bought before buy.
Or
right?
things that you discussed with your partner earlier in the day, like, I'm pregnant, and all of a sudden you're getting like strollers.
Super creepy. Yes. So anyway, you have this personalized store that you see that has only the things that are quote unquote relevant to you, being driven by an algorithm. That experience is coming to restaurants, is coming to food.
Yes.
So let's say that you are a person who's decided that you want to eat more fish because it's healthy. That's what you've picked, right? But your old behavior was that you ate a lot of fried chicken. And so you're trying to make a shift from fried chicken to fish. Well, what do you think is being served up to you by Google, by DoorDash, by Uber, by even restaurants that you've opted into their loyalty programs?
Fish?
No, fried chicken.
Oh, fried chicken.
It's telling you fried chicken, fried chicken, fried chicken, because that's what you bought.
In the past.
That's what you responded to. And your behavioral data accumulated on all those platforms says you like fried chicken. You
fried chicken's pretty good.
I mean, I
kind of want fried chicken now.
I know. You repeatedly make a decision to purchase fried chicken. And so that's what it's going to keep showing you. And in order to escape that and to choose, I want to eat fish instead, you're going to have to actively seek that out and tell the algorithms, no, I'm not going to eat fried chicken this time. I'm going to eat fish.
So you can retrain the algorithm.
You can retrain the algorithms, but it goes back to our success quote at the beginning about be intentional. You have to do it on purpose as a consumer. If you just wait for fish to be shown to you as an option, it's not going to happen because the algorithms have been trained that what you care about is fried chicken.
Yeah, I hear you. I just get concerned. I mean, I didn't want to go down this rabbit hole so early in the interview, but I think it's something that's important is that one of the reasons why I like getting people like you on the show is to get people ahead of the curve and to get them above their head above water so they can see what's going on. Like, so they're not like just like trapped under the, like, you know, under the surface, just in it all day, reacting to the consumer out of fear. I think that's another issue is that we react to the consumer, but the consumer doesn't have any clue what's going on. And we're just like reacting to this thing that's just being influenced and manipulated by marketplaces. Is that safe to say?
Well, not just the market. I mean, marketplaces still are only what, like 5 or 10% of overall restaurant spend. They're still quite small. So the manipulation, to the extent that it happens, of a consumer is an amalgamation of all kinds of technology, right? Marketplaces, the Google algorithm, the open table algorithm, right? Like all kinds of things.
But
where
like
people
even
are
like
accessing
Meta
food.
and Google and all these places, because of the ads, and that's really how they make their money in the data, they're marketplaces.
Yeah,
They don't
that's
want
fair.
you to know they're marketplaces. That's the illusion. You're being sold and manipulated and persuaded every turn.
Yeah, this is, again, why I have to go back to be intentional, right?
Yeah.
If you get served an ad by, you know, Instagram while you're on it, that doesn't mean you have to go do something about it.
Right. I got to switch the subject before my heart rate gets too out of control. So one thing, let's talk. So we talked about like, you know, what had happened over the past 3 years, right? Like were all these trends, the world's going to completely digital, ghost kitchens, virtual kitchens. Was that going to be the new future of restaurants? And then, you know, here we are today. What have you seen? Like what, I think you started getting into that. It's more of like a blend of like brick and mortar restaurants taking the lessons that we learned from virtual kitchens and kind of like finding a middle ground of using those virtual approaches to test markets and things like this and test brands and to start small.
You certainly see some of that. You also see folks who are absolutely dedicated to delivery only and who are doing it really, really well. So there's a brand called Cluster Truck in Indianapolis. That's the company that our software company spun out of. There is a brand called Umi Digital Kitchen in Dallas.
Well, I think you started talking about this and I pulled you off getting you into the marketplaces. Like, where is it working? Is what you're going to say.
Where is it working? Yeah.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master on restaurant systems and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
There's a company called Goop Kitchen based here in LA, which is fantastic. And all of these companies are very, very dedicated to delivery. They are what I would describe as delivery first companies. Many of them do not really have a pickup business, so to speak, because that's not the business that they're in. If they do, it's a very minor part of their business. And what do we see working about these guys? First of all, they are purpose-built for delivery. So they're thinking about the business from first principles to say, if this is going to be delivered food and the way that I'm going to connect with my consumers digitally, what does it need to look like? How do I need to come across online? How do I reconnect with them and remarket to them after the fact? And if you think about a consumer's journey starting from, ooh, I'm hungry, all the way through to now I've finished eating, there's a lot of steps in there, right? So thinking through how to optimize the food time in kitchen and the throughput in the kitchen, thinking through how to get it delivered to someone as quickly as possible and a great consumer experience, really being intentional about those things and designing for those things. And I think the companies who have done that, you see them doing much, much better. So that that is certainly working.
What were these three? It was Los Angeles, Dallas, and what was the other market?
Indianapolis.
Is there anything unique about those marketplaces, like those physical marketplaces?
I don't think they're very different. So Los Angeles is very high penetration delivery, very high usage, a lot of...
The highways are fantastic.
At night. Yeah. They're fantastic at night.
They're very efficient.
It's a very high delivery usage community. There are a lot of higher income, no kid type, either single or dual income situations. And therefore, people have a lot more disposable income. There are also places that I describe as the renting rich. And what we mean by that is, I don't know if you remember this when you were young, but when I was young, our parents would say we're house poor. And that meant all the money's going to the mortgage.
Right.
And so you couldn't buy other fun stuff. And the opposite of that is true today. If you have no hope of ever buying a house, and so you're a renter, that means you actually have more disposable income.
And some people are making the choice to choose the lifestyle over the assets.
100%. Yeah.
Look at me. I'm kind of like, I'm like mobile rich.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I live in a camper.
Exactly.
I eat out a lot because I don't want to mess up my tiny little kitchen
Totally.
and have my sheets smell like food.
Yeah.
Because my bed is 5 feet from my kitchen. So I eat out a lot,
Totally.
and there's more and more people living that lifestyle too.
Totally. There's very much. So LA has a very big delivery penetration because of those factors. Indianapolis is a little bit less dense, densely populated. There's not as many high rises and things like that.
More spread out.
It's a little bit more spread out. People in the Midwest, I think, are a little bit more likely to own homes still instead of being in that renting rich category. So it's a very different market, but still working very well. Dallas, I think, has a lower delivery penetration and is super spread out.
Right.
Very not dense.
Big footprint.
But all three of the brands that I just talked about tend to be in denser areas of the cities that they're in.
These started as digital brands and delivery only.
Yep, they started as delivery only. Yep.
Were they spun out of a previous restaurant?
No. So Cluster Truck was designed as delivery only from the get-go.
That's Indianapolis.
And they have about 15 different brands or what they call trucks. There are no physical trucks, but that's how they think of the brands as trucks.
So it's kind of like their brand, the illusion they're trying to create is a food truck market.
Exactly.
Got
exactly. It. Yep. And then Umi has, I think, about 12 different brands now. And they carry all of those brands on their Umi website and as well have them deployed across the different platforms or marketplaces.
What are they cooking? What are they specializing in?
I would say most of Umi's products are more of this sort of modern healthy. So along the lines of Mexicans and bowls and Mediterranean and things like that.
Cool.
And then Cluster Trucks is based in Indianapolis. I think it's a little more like Mid-American. So it's a lot of salads, wraps, pizzas, pasta, and burgers and things like that. And then Goop Kitchen out here in LA, they are all based on here's the word again, food beliefs of Gwyneth Paltrow. And so Gwyneth Paltrow has a email newsletter that she puts out on a website called Goop, and Goop Kitchen is based on the food beliefs that she puts out in that newsletter on that website.
See, that's
and in her
interesting.
cookbooks.
So you're so creative, like the business models, where you're kind of taking like the big chicken approach of using influence, celebrity influence, and then you're not just using her following and her influence. You're taking her beliefs and people who have an emotional connection to her beliefs, almost like a cult following with like, this is how I want to live my life. And they're probably mostly in California, those people, because that's the kind of person, that's her target market.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very bi-coastal. Certainly she lives in California. So a lot of her followers and especially the original members of her email newsletter were in Los Angeles.
And you're getting access. How big is her list?
I have no idea.
You know what I mean? Like,
huge.
that's so huge. Mr. Beast Burger, how big is his list?
Yeah.
You think of like social influence, but to your point earlier, you don't want to put all of your eggs into these marketplaces, these followings, whether that's Facebook or YouTube or Uber Eats or DoorDash. Like, you don't want to have your following there. The point that we made earlier is you want to get them back to your native platform, your home base, your list, your website. You want emails, text, like phone numbers. Like, is that the in between, like the
Yeah, I mean,
message?
ideally, you want to be able to talk to these people. And so Cluster Truck is almost 100% native or first party. Umi is probably about half.
When you say native, what do you mean?
Direct ordering or first party, like that consumer is coming literally to the Cluster Truck website. They're not going
clustertruck.com. They're not going through DoorDash.
They're not going through DoorDash or Uber. Umi's probably about half. Goop Kitchen, a good percentage. I don't know what theirs is, of people coming directly to their app, their website.
Right.
And yes, that unlocks all kinds of things. That unlocks the ability to give the guest a special perk. That unlocks the ability to know that guest and show them a menu that's customized to them. That unlocks the ability to email them and tell them about a new product that you have coming out, or to text them and offer all kinds of things that you just can't do if you're going through Uber Eats or DoorDash.
Is this technically a ghost kitchen or a virtual brand?
Okay, so this is where it gets tricky, because in many cases, these are both virtual brands and ghost kitchens, right? So Cluster Truck is operating a ghost kitchen. They operate the hardware, and they also operate the virtual brands. They own them. They don't license them from anyone else. They are their brands. And in that respect, they are completely vertically integrated.
So they own the hardware and the software.
Exactly. So they own the real estate location. They own the brands. They own the entire operations. And they actually have their own 1099 driver fleet delivering the orders. They're not using
I love that.
Relay or Jolt or Uber or DoorDash or Lyft or whoever.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we learn from these brands and realize that there's other options. But I also think that there needs to be innovation for technology to provide other options. And I get so worried sometimes because I'm reading the Power in Progress right now. I'm very familiar with that book. It's all about following technology over time and to figure out how, whenever technology came along, how it disrupted society. It's like an anthropological approach to technology over time.
That sounds very interesting.
It's written by like a Harvard or MIT professor, the economics. It's really interesting.
I definitely will get that.
The reason he wrote this book is because he's looking down the road of like where we're going with AI and how much of a disruptor that's going to be. And what he's trying to point out is like, here are all the different times there was disruptions in society, technological disruptions. And what ends up happening is whoever has the power, whoever has the message, whoever can influence the most people and convince people that their way is the best way, then that's what ends up happening. So when you have all these companies that have all the data and all the ability to influence power, then we just don't know any, like what ends up happening is we have no other way, because they get, and we think of like these companies like Meta, Google, which is YouTube, they own all the channels of communication. So they can, and they have all the data on you to influence you, to persuade you on what to do.
Which
really
is why
scary.
you have to be intentional. You have to say, this is what I want. But irrespective of what I'm being told by all these.
I think it's also really important that we communicate this sort of thing, so we know to fragment those powerhouses and choose to give our money, because at the end of the day, the consumer decides everything. That's the one hope. But I think what's happening right now is the restaurant industry is responding to the consumer. The consumer is ignorant AF. They don't know what the hell is going on. They just want to swipe. You know what I mean? They just want to click a button and have it be as easy as possible. But if they click 2 buttons, they could probably help out a lot more people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if there's anything, if a consumer is listening to this podcast instead of a restaurant person, if there is anything that you can do to get yourself to just do that one extra little step of effort to go directly to a restaurant's own website, you will help them a ton.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that professor on the show, so I'm really hoping I can get that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But I think I'm going to argue, persuade the listener to actually realize that you, as a restaurant owner, you have a lot of influence. And I think that there needs to be a shift in tide where we stop reacting to the consumer and we start making the consumer react to us.
Yeah, well, I think if you offer a great experience, they will.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a big part of Lisa Miller's philosophy. She's a restaurant consumer insights person who writes about the philosophy of joy. And her thought is if you bring the consumer joy, they will do more of what brings them joy.
Yes. Sorry, did you want to keep going? I think I cut you short.
So if you can create an experience that's great for people, they're going to do more of it. And so instead of saying, oh, I give up, everyone's on DoorDash, I'm just going to go to DoorDash and be there and join the herd. If instead you can say, how could I make delivery a more joyful experience, a better experience on my first party than they're able to get on third party, you're going to get consumers to come to you. And I think that's exactly what people like Goop and Umi and Cluster Truck have found.
Yeah. You alluded to something a few times, and I'm trying to remember exactly the words you used, that we're moving in this direction of intentionality. What's the word that you used, or the phrase that you use, of this, the consumer being more thoughtful with their purchasing? Do you know where I'm going with this?
If they take the extra effort to go directly to the website.
Yeah, but what was the expression you used? So maybe if I just start talking, you'll like spur a memory, or you'll kind of piggyback on what I'm saying. But I had Joe Pine on the show, the author of The Experience Economy. He's also in the process of writing The Transformation Economy. So part of what he's seeing is that we came from the service economy, we went from the service economy to the experience economy, and savvy restaurateurs and just general entrepreneurs are realizing people are paying for the experience, and that's what you're charging for. So what's the value of this experience, right? And now what we're looking at is almost like conscious capitalism is coming on the rise, and people they're paying for the experience of making the choice to make a difference. They want to align with what's your why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And the experience of knowing that if I spend $3 more on these eggs, then I'm supporting a farm that's in my community, and that makes me feel good. And it's about making a difference, making a change, whether it's a personal change or a collective change, the transformation economy.
Well, that's very similar to the idea of eating along with your food beliefs, right? And maybe your food belief
That's part of it.
Is I want to support a local farm.
Yes.
Maybe your food belief is...
That's what we were talking about. I think food beliefs, or your beliefs.
Yeah.
Is that what you were saying earlier, that triggered? Yes.
Yeah. Maybe your food belief is I want to eat an anti-inflammatory diet, right? And, I think it was Tim Ferriss who made popular originally the idea of the Chipotle diet, and paying the flat belly tax is what he called it. Because if you got avocado instead of cheese, that would lead to being fitter, right? And of course, Chipotle charges extra for avocado. Right. They don't include it. And so he said, yeah, it's the flat belly tax. Right. Like that's what you got to pay for this. And people do it.
Yeah. And I think it's a really exciting time because we're learning more and more and more about what does the world, like what's like the planet need? Like we're overfishing, right? We have a centralized food system. We're destroying the Midwest. The farmlands are all just like, there's no like nutrients left in the soil. Where all of our decisions we've been making for the past 70 years are starting to catch up with us. We're not healthy because we've been eating all this processed crap food. So like what's amazing is the more we dive into it, the more we get to the root of it, when we start making better decisions for ourselves, it impacts the environment. What's best for us is also best for the planet.
I think that's right. And I think, to me, this is where delivery should go, and it should be really exciting. If you can shorten the distance in between the creation of the food, wherever that is on the farm, and the consumption of the food with the consumer, if you can shorten the distance between those, you need less processing. You need less preservatives. It is better for you. It's better for the environment, right? And those things are going to happen via all kinds of technology. But I think importantly, that last mile to the consumer via delivery. And unfortunately, what's happened in the last 10 years as we look at the rise of the delivery is that it's come to look very much like suburban America, right? You see all of the same brands when you open up your app on the homepage as you see when you drive around to a power center in suburban America. And instead of seeing the things that are local to you, or the things that source locally or are better for you or are anti-inflammatory, you're just going to see the same brands you see everywhere
that are
else.
willing to pay the premium to have their ads pushed to the top.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the book. So what you do really well in this book, you have all the chapters. I think it's 7 something. I can't remember what you call the 7 steps or the 7 processes or the 7
steps.
Yep,
On the path
of how to be a digital to reach digital maturity, right? And you do a really good job, like in a step-by-step process of like, this is what you need in your business. Like, you even kind of share the secrets of these platforms, and you advocate to do the things that some of these people that show up at the top are doing, like paying the premiums if you launch a digital brand to get awareness. And you rationalize why it's important that you actually do pay those premiums, and that you should look at these third-party marketplaces as a way to literally just market and then integrate to your native platforms, right? Where am I going with this? I mean, I resist. I just don't like these. Uber Eats tried to sponsor my podcast. I told them to go pound sand.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I was
wow.
like, just
that
because.
takes guts. I love it.
Well, it's just, I don't believe in what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like, it's annoying for me. I mean, I agree with everything that you wrote in your book. I'm like, these are really great step-by-step best practices. And you get into that. So I guess, as much as I want to bitch about these things, I feel like we should get into the best practices, because I do think today, if you want to stay relevant, if you want to stay in business, if you want to run a profitable business that's marketing savvy, like, this is the way to go.
Yeah. Well,
but I think we should just have foresight of where we're going and
why. Yeah. So again, being intentional, right? You need to decide what kind of restaurant you are. If you are an experiential restaurant, you probably don't need to be on the platforms, right? You probably don't need to offer delivery.
When you say that, you're talking like full service fine dining.
If you are full service fine dining, if you are about people coming to your place, if you're a place maker kind of a restaurant, you probably don't need to do delivery. You probably need other forms of convenience and other forms of technology, but you probably don't have to have delivery.
Yeah, like open table talk, like things that making the reservation easier, or so you don't have to wait in the heat and line,
or virtual wait line, that kind of thing.
Dude, a cool one that they just came out with is called Line Leap.
Ooh.
Where you can pay a premium to skip the line, which I love. That's kind of like dynamic pricing, which you talk about at the end of the book, which we'll get into eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so decide which one you are. If you are a brand that is about convenience, which means if you are QSR, if you are fast casual, if you are in some way about helping people eat quickly and on the go or in between things, then you really need to be thinking about technology and be thinking about how to make things as easy for people as possible. And that starts with the marketplaces. And it starts with the marketplaces because that's where hungry people are going, right? There are people using them. With the Amazon Grubhub deal, with the credit card deals for both Uber and DoorDash, consumers are there. They're using these tools, and it would be foolish to just say, well, I'm not going to serve those consumers, right? And so that then leads you to, if I'm going to use them, I need to figure out how to use them well. And I think it is a great place to acquire new consumers.
Yeah. But the goal is to get them off those platforms onto your native platform.
I think that is ideal, right?
Yeah.
For some people, that's never going to happen. You know, I know there are certain companies that say subsidize DoorDash or Uber use, and they'll say you get a certain budget every day or every week to buy lunch to have brought to you. Those people are never going to go direct to a restaurant because it's only subsidized if they go through DoorDash, right?
Right.
So there are certain people that's just their ingrained behavior. That's where they are. And for them, you should say, great, if that's how you like to order and that's how you like to receive your food, you can continue to do that. It's going to cost something different because that's the channel that you choose to live in, right? And I need to, as a restaurant, make that profitable for me.
Yeah, you're trading your convenience you're paying a premium for your convenience. Because Uber Eats has you dialed in, your algorithms. You get to open the app and hit one button and be done. That costs $2.
Correct. But for the consumers who truly love your brand, who come to you frequently, maybe live in your neighborhood.
Maybe know you personally.
Yeah, the goal should be they should be ordering from you directly. And you should be in a position where you can have a personalized relationship, digital relationship with that consumer.
Yeah. It's interesting. You end your book on the statement that maybe, I think you're alluding that you got into the restaurant industry because you love to cook, you love to be in person, you love the physical world around you, and now you're feeling like you have all this pressure to be tech savvy, to be a marketer, to be a ninja with like all this digital shit. But all you ever wanted to do is cook food and be around people you love, and you're like, it's almost a feeling of resentment. I think the argument that you're making is, if you're a restaurant owner, you're a business owner. You're in the, you have a certain, responsibility to be a business savvy person. Is that what?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Sentiment?
And I think still, if you want to be a placemaker, I mean, awesome. Go have a dine-in restaurant that isn't about convenience. It's about experience.
And I think that's a good point.
That is still a totally viable channel that Americans love.
And yes.
It was always going to be a business.
Yes. But the point that I want to make is that if I've learned anything, I've learned that all business, it's about relationships. It's baked into the world. It's a company. What is company? It's the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the company. I'm having company today. It's relationships. And I worry that we're going to put convenience over. We're going to make it, society is becoming more transactional and less transformative. Less about the relationships, more about the convenience. We're more dependent on marketplace and government than we are on family, community. It's like there's like this shift happening. So, I mean, that's my only pushback is that, yes, it is business, but let's not lose sight of relationships, because that's at the core of everything,
Yeah. And that's where you really want to get that direct relationship with the consumer, to get your guest ordering from you again and again.
Right.
Because whether that's in person, and, we talk in the book about the omni-channel guest, the same person sometimes is going to come into your restaurant to eat, and sometimes they're going to order online. Same person, but just a different occasion, right?
Right.
So no matter how they choose to engage with your brand, you should have one consolidated view of that individual.
Right.
They shouldn't become invisible all of a sudden when they walk into your restaurant because you don't have a digital ordering platform, right?
Well,
and I think whether that relationship you have with them is in person and talking or digital, you should have a relationship with them, right? And the very best digital restaurant companies have figured out how to create that digital guest relationship.
Yeah, I think one way to think about it is it's omnipresent relationships, digital and more intimate. You have to be there for everybody, and those tools and technologies. And I think you also said something that's really exciting too. I think back in 2020, 2021, we're all like, is this the future of the is everyone just gonna order food and we're not gonna get to see the praise of our guests, their happy faces when they love the things we're doing for them, the services we're one of the cool things about working in this industry is that it's instant gratification.
That's true. Feedback.
Yeah, I get to see your happy face and I know you love me. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
When you take that out of the four walls, you don't get that benefit, the reward. But to your point, what that was our fear. But I think that what we're seeing is that we oftentimes don't consider the human element when we're thinking about progress, technology, Moore's law, right? Exponential improvement. But we're still human. The technology might be improving at an exponential rate around us, but I think that we forget to take into account that we still have our human needs. We still want to see people. We still want to sit around a table. I still want to drive across the country and do these interviews in person because of the energy, And I think when we're thinking about technology, we forget to factor in the fact that the world around us might be evolving at an exponential rate, but humans aren't evolving.
We're still pretty human. Well, there's a story in our first book. It's actually a conversation I had with my husband. He is younger than me. He's a millennial. And so whenever I want to know, what are the kids doing these days, I ask him. And I said, I don't get it. If your generation is all about experiences, why do you order delivery all the time? Why don't you get off the sofa and go to a restaurant and see people face to face? Why are you ordering delivery? And he goes, well, you have to think about why I'm ordering delivery. I'm probably ordering delivery because I'm playing a video game online with my best friend who lives on the other side of the country. So I am still having an experience. It's just that the experience is being defined totally differently from how you would define a traditional restaurant experience, right? And I think that is true for the vast majority of people who order delivery. I think we make fun of a lot in popular culture. Like if you've seen the Colbert piece on delivery, he talks a lot about like stoners ordering, by themselves and getting food brought to them, or, just generally making fun of people who are basically like recluses playing video games, eating delivery. Although that is hilarious to make fun of, I don't think that is the majority of use cases. Right. I think most people, when they order delivery, are ordering it because they had a super busy day at work and they couldn't go to the grocery store, or they want to spend time with their family talking and they don't want to be stuck in the kitchen doing dishes the whole time. It is a very, very different use case and much more experiential than I think we imagine when we make those jokes about people.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm back to the book. I can talk about this stuff.
We have so many things to get through.
I don't think we're going to be covering every chapter, but I do want to cover the chapter where you're talking about, like, you really kind of map it out. Like, these are the technologies that you should be investing in if you want to have success digitally. And I was really excited because a lot of the companies that you recommend are companies that my data supports too. So like in terms of tech stack, like what is the tech stack that, I mean, I know you don't want to just like say like one company, but like what are like the different elements, like starting like how do we build this tech stack? Like what are like the bare minimum things we need?
Yeah, sure.
What up, unstoppable restaurant owners and operators? We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro, we're taking our relationship to the next level. Beginning in July of 2024, Fred Langley, CEO of Restaurant Systems Pro, is making himself available once a week in Restaurant Unstoppable Network to answer all of your restaurant systems questions, whether it's the profit margins. He will look at your P&L. Bring your P&L. He will take a look at that. He will dissect it. He will help you find your profit, whether that be through budgeting, inventory management, costing recipe cards, labor, checklists, you name it. He is a master of restaurant systems and he's making himself available to you. Fred Langley and Restaurant Systems Pro started as a consulting firm, and for over 16 years, they've been helping their clients increase their profit by 10% or more. What are you waiting for? Click the link below to join our Facebook group, Restaurant Unstoppable Network.
So I think, again, that will depend on, are you a more experiential restaurant or are you a more convenience-oriented restaurant? Let's start with a more convenience-oriented restaurant. I think, the bare minimum of things that you need are the ability to take an order in, process and produce that order, and then send that order out, right? And then it just gets more complex from there. And we typically see a really advanced digital restaurant is probably using 15 to 20 different pieces of software to make all that magic work. Increasingly, the really big companies are creating a lot of their own software, and they might not do the entire thing, but they're doing a lot of the bits and pieces, or they're doing the bits and pieces to stitch it all together. And increasingly, we're seeing the creation of what I will call restaurant tech platforms that offer a bit of a more end-to-end holistic experience. So in the very last chapter, we talk about something called holistic technology. And I think this idea for us was inspired by what we've seen happen in retail, where very similar to restaurant, they had an explosion of innovation at the front. They had all these different technologies come out. And I don't know if you remember 20 years ago, you couldn't like order online and then pick it up at the store, or order online and then return it at the like that wasn't a thing that you could do. You couldn't see the inventory of every single store in America online like that. It wasn't possible, right? And holistic technology in our minds is what makes that omni-channel dream more realistic and starts to bring it all together. And what that ultimately requires is that when a consumer places an order, no matter how they place it, third party, first party, kiosk, in person, doesn't matter, that data is coming into one central place. Historically in restaurant, that's been the POS. I think it will become much more of an order management system, much more like the system that...
What are some of the examples of order management systems?
So an order management system today, I think the only one truly that you could get would be Empower Delivery. that
Empower
operates
Delivery?
that way, which is my company.
Okay.
But if you think of it in the retail world, that would be something that looks more like what Amazon is built on, right? And the difference between that is POS literally stands for point of sale. You're going to walk in and make a purchase at a point of sale. Someone is going to punch it into a terminal and a cash drawer is going to open. That's what a point of sale was. It is morphed into becoming almost the brain of the restaurant, but then it's being superseded as that brain gets pulled out of the restaurant into online ordering. So now we almost have a situation where we've got multiple brains, right? We've got...
It's kind of like how our own brain started as like this like reptilian simple like react, like do the thing, like, you know, like, but now like the frontal lobe is starting to cut, the layers are building on top.
That's kind of what's happening. And so in some cases, restaurants are managing the menu in multiple places. They're managing on the POS, they're managing on their website, they're managing on different third-party websites, very complex. Whereas an order management system truly is going to let you manage the menu in one place, push that menu out to everywhere. And then it is also going to help you decide how to prioritize those orders. So imagine something like being able on your first party website, when a consumer comes to place an order, to see exactly how long the wait time is, to have a digital queue, so to speak, replicating the experience of walking up to a restaurant and seeing that it's really busy. Amazing.
So you're dropping a lot on us right now. So we had the POS, right? From there, we're starting to realize there needs to be a layer above this, almost like a conductor or like a director.
I love that you chose that word. We call ours the conductor.
Oh, really?
How'd you get that?
I don't know. So but it's kind of like managing the traffic, right?
Yeah, correct.
So, and I think in the book you mentioned Chowley, Otter. Was there another one?
Well, there are a lot.
But you also have Empower Delivery, which is your company.
Chowley and Otter are third-party aggregators. DeliverAct is another aggregator. Ordermark was an aggregator.
So aggregating meaning pulling in the orders from all over the place, bringing them to a central place so you don't need to have tablets. Those tablets are so intrusive too. Like I can't stand when I'm at a restaurant and I just hear this dinging in the background.
Yeah. Or when you have you been to a fast casual place and you're like walking down the line and the employee like wanders off and gets a tablet and starts making an order in front of you that's not yours? And
right.
You're like, what happened?
But I'm here.
Yeah. So those companies are order aggregators. There are many different order aggregators. They're pulling in from all the different marketplaces into one place. Those aggregators typically aggregate down into the POS.
Now, is there two-way tokenization with those platforms?
So
Am
that
I
they're
using the right term?
Sending data back, you mean?
Because that's been a challenge in the past where we get an order and they ask for Diet Coke. Crap, we're out of Diet Coke. Like, do we send it back? And
can't do anything about that.
Right.
Yeah,
so if they already paid for it,
that.
like, what are we going to do? But now I think going into the future, they're starting to realize that there's this ability, we're developing the ability to say, refund them $2 because we don't have that.
So imagine though, if you had a holistic technology and it was all one system and the place that you were managing the menu was the same place that you were executing the menu, and you managed the menu in one place, it got pushed out to all the different possible ordering channels, whether it was a kiosk or third party.
Are you talking like Marquee right now, what they do, similar to Marquee? And if I'm pulling up your competitors, I apologize.
Yeah, I don't think it's similar to Marquee.
So what Marquee does is they'll
that.
So I think, and I'm not fully the best person to be speaking about this because again, I'd rather sit across the table or on a couch with somebody. I'm not a digital person, but my understanding of Marquee is basically if you need to make changes to your menu, and instead of going to all these different third-party platforms and changing your menu, it pushes the updates.
Yeah. So that is one little piece. So this is how we end up with a situation where a restaurant would have 15 to 20 different pieces of software, right?
Yeah,
so
it's so overwhelming, and it's constantly
need
changing.
One for pushing back updates, and one for pulling in orders, and a POS. It's a lot. Right?
I think you said in the book 15 to 20 different softwares that you need today to manage your restaurant.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I think as we move forward, we're going to end up with much more holistic technology where someone can sort of press the easy button and say, "This whole system just works."
Yeah.
And that is a lot of the philosophy behind Empower Delivery, is that you press the easy button and it just works. There are other companies that are also trying to build things like that, right? Toast is absolutely trying to build the easy button. either by the different pieces that they're building or the different acquisitions they've made.
So I think they're doing it differently, where Toast is more trying to do like open API integration.
They do both. So they have a marketplace on which they sell all the different things that they're integrated with. So as a restaurant, you can go find different pieces to plug in to the underlying Toast hardware.
Do they make commissions on that?
I'm guessing.
Oh my God, they get it from every angle. How am I supposed to compete with Toast?
So they do that, but they also have things that they've purchased that they then roll out as part of their own, or that they've built, right? So they started as a POS, they built a KDS, they bought Extra Chef. So as they go through, there are some categories where they literally have, I think they have their own scheduling piece that they bought, but then they also offer, say, 7 shifts, right? So they have Toast Delivery Services, which is their kind of dispatch function that's built into the POS. But then they also have, Ship Day as a partner on their website. So I think that they're a little bit like open and, let anyone do what they want. But what they're driving toward is the best things that most restaurants need and gravitate to. They end up either building into the software or purchasing and adding on to the software. So
when they achieve that, do you think they're going to shut off all their integrations?
Oh man, wow! You asked the hard questions. I don't think they will, because I think there'll be too many consumers who
would be so pissed off.
Yeah, too many restaurants who are like, I'm dependent on that thing. I need it.
I secretly hope they do that so they piss off a lot of people.
Wow. I don't know. That is a big question, Eric.
So
another company who's trying to build is Olo, right? And they're trying to build, I would describe, very heavily on the consumer facing front end.
Right. They're trying to bleed the world of digital into 4 walls, which is really exciting.
So they
I had
started.
Noah on the show.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Started, of course, with online ordering. They bought Wisely, so they have a built-in CDP. Now they're trying to.
What does CDP stand for?
Customer Data Platform. So that's where all the data is housed, all that behavioral data that drives the algorithms that you are concerned about. And then they are trying to, I think, build a kiosk. They're trying to digitize in-store transactions as they do all of those things. Very heavy on the front end, right?
So what's cool about that is they started as online ordering. That's what the OLO stands for.
Not
online.
Just a clever name.
Yeah, OLO. But as they evolved OLO, they're starting to say well, the future, there's not going to be this. The lines are going to get blurred, right? So they're trying to digitize the 4-wall experience, with your point, with the kiosks, QR codes, or just ordering straight from the phone. So you can kind of have it, you get all those data touch points that you lose in the 4-wall experience. Continue along. I mean, am I missing anything?
I think that's exactly what they're up to. There's a little chart I'm going to pull up.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hold it right up in front of your face for a second so we can see that chart.
In the book that talks about how some of the different companies are going after this holistic vision. And Toast has probably gotten the farthest along in terms of the things that they've purchased. But then you see someone like even Restaurant 365, right, with their purchase of Compete. And certainly they haven't built all the way forward to the consumer, right? They don't have online ordering and things like that.
It's more back office.
Very back office. And they're kind of building their way forward a little bit at a time from that back office.
Is Restaurant Systems Pro on your radar?
No.
I need to put them on your radar.
You love them?
I do. I would say Restaurant 365 has been around longer in the sense of a more holistic package, but Restaurant Systems Pro just purchased a POS. They built out their general ledger. They have a KDS, and they started with, their story is they basically started as a consulting company where they went around and here are all the systems that a successful restaurant needs. Labor management, inventory management, costing, budgeting, all those core systems that make a restaurant profitable. They taught people how to do that. And then over time, they developed it as a service software as a service to the point now where the thing that they were missing that Restaurant 365 had was a general ledger. So now it's all tied together in the back end and all the data points are pushing to the general ledger and it all flows. But they just purchased the POS. So now they're a POS, a general ledger, and all those other base costing, inventory management, and the thing that I love the most about Restaurant Systems Pro is that the people are amazing. Fred Langley, the CEO, is just an amazing dude, and I want to see them be successful. So I'm going to put them on your radar.
Very
Check
good.
them out.
I
I'd love to
it.
make an introduction.
And it sounds like they've got a lot of that back end.
Yeah.
I would love to see like how far or how wide their scope is.
I recorded a 2-hour-long demo with Fred.
So. Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll share that with you.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, please check it out. But anyway, they are a sponsor, so I will disclose.
Disclose. Yes.
But I am so happy to have them as a sponsor because they're just great people. But continue along your train of thought, please.
Okay, so
Restaurant 365, you were talking about.
Yeah, so Restaurant 365 is building from the back end. Olo is starting very strong at the front end. You've got companies like PAR, which has been buying up different things like Brink and Punch and assembling different pieces of the system as well. So I think this is where we will end up. It won't be quite as...
So instead of 20, you're going to have 4.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's just too confusing for a restaurant to keep track of that many different subscriptions, that many different logins. Like, how do they relate to each other? And I would actually argue that this open API thing is a bit of a lie, right?
Argue the open API thing is a bit of a lie.
A bit of a lie.
Like having all these different technologies be able to communicate and work with each other.
So where it came from, if you think back in the old days of old school POS software, like NCR or Aloha, they were what was called a walled garden, meaning you couldn't connect things from the outside world to them. And
they wanted to protect that intellectual property. They own the market, maybe?
Exactly. And also, it is complex to integrate with outside things. And it was especially complex in the old days before everything was cloud-based. And so I think this open API approach was brought to restaurants who are like, yeah, I do want to be able to break into Aloha, get my data. I do want to be able to like connect NCR to this other thing, right? And it sounded very appealing. But I think tech people have done a bit of disservice to restaurants in making it sound almost too easy. Oh, as long as it has an open API, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's not actually how anything works.
Get ABC, always be closing. Get the sale, right?
Yeah. It's not actually how anything works. And even if there is a quote unquote open API and the two things could in theory talk to one another, you have a couple problems. One is they might not structure data in the same way. So someone structures it this way, they have an open API, they send it over here, this company structures it this way. They actually can't talk to each other, right? Or if, let's say, something is happening over here, in your example of running out of Coke, something's happening in this piece of software over here, it can't control this piece of software via API and say, hey, don't do this anymore, right? So it is more complex than it sounds.
Yeah, and I think the other variables that people don't consider is like one software changes, they update. Now all their integrations are all wonky.
Yeah.
One company sells to another company that bought them.
Yeah.
So you, as the restaurant owner, and these things happen annually. Like there are multiple events that happen annually that will totally throw a wrench in your tech stack if you're not on it 24/7. Yeah. And you show me a restaurant owner who's like, yes, technology. Like I want to pay attention to every move every one of my partners are making. Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody.
But
they just want it to work.
Exactly. And it's just one of these things. We're in this weird phase, I think, our industry, we're like growing up. We're going through puberty right now where we're like, I'm like, I don't know how to like handle like hair growing on my face. Like, what do I do with that?
We call it at Yum, we would call it the fuzzy front end of innovation. I love this phrase. And it just gives you permission to be kind of a hot mess because you're brainstorming, right? You're thinking about what could be and what the future is like. And I think in a lot of ways, restaurant tech is in that phase, right? They are what could be and what are all the potential options and how could all of this stuff work together? And every day there's a new idea of how something should come about. And I always think of restaurant tech this way. Okay, we started with basically a POS and a back of house system. That was like the end of restaurant tech. The front, the middle, and the back. Right? That was it. And then along came, I guess Grubhub probably was first and all the things that it bought up. And we had online ordering through a third-party marketplace. And we said, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that third-party marketplace. And then all of a sudden there were like 3 of them. And we were like, oh man, tablet hell, we need an aggregator.
Yeah.
And then we were like, you know what would be better though, is if people actually ordered from us direct. So we started having to, but people like apps. So maybe we'll get an app. But now that we have a website and an app, gosh, it sure would be better if people use them more. How do we get them to come over from third party to first party? Well, we need a loyalty program, right? And these things just start proliferating. Now we want to get their opinion about how their experience was. So we need some kind of feedback system. And now we want to layer on top of that, the ability to capture revenue from chargebacks from the third party marketplaces. So we layer on a system like that, and we just keep adding. And it's not that any of these ideas are bad ideas. They're all great ideas. But the weight of the complexity of all of those different things makes you wonder, what if you just went back to first principles and said, I want to have a digital relationship with my consumer, and that's how I want to run my restaurant? What answer would you get? I bet it would be different. It wouldn't be 15 to 20 different pieces of software.
Right. So where we're at now is like we've had time to evolve, and now we have to kind of distill and compartmentalize the units that make sense. And you identified 4 basic parts. Did I hear that right?
Well, I didn't even get into all of it. I think I got, we had our POS, our back of house system, third-party ordering, third-party order aggregation. Then we said first-party ordering, an app, a loyalty program, feedback, and then we haven't even gotten into the back of house, right? So then I want a kiosk, I want a KDS, I want some way to manage my deliveries out the back door.
Right. Labor management, inventory management,
absolutely.
General ledger, i.e. QuickBooks or something like that.
Yeah.
Or is it Xero? Is that the other one? So now that we've identified all those different units, right? We identified that Olo is kind of aggregated and combined all of like the reservation and like digital.
They're really working on that consumer facing front end, digitizing the consumer relationship, I would say. And they just bought SpendGo, which was a loyalty platform. So I think that's really the part that they have carved out at this point.
Yeah,
right?
They're kind of from online ordering to reservations to in-store purchasing. They're basically the point of all types of transaction, and then they're capturing all the data points on that. So you can are they also CRM, or is that like a Bicky that
so Wisely is a customer data platform, which maybe raises the question, what's the difference between a CDP and a CRM? That is like a whole can of worms. No one in restaurant needs to know the difference, honestly.
And then you have the back of house, which is like all of your production systems and management systems. Like I think the systems I can think of immediately are like budgeting, costing, purchasing, inventory management, labor management. What else is there?
That's a pretty good set of
checklist, training.
Stuff. Yep, training, LMS system. Yep.
And I don't know where the lines are drawn with Restaurant 365. I know that's what Restaurant Systems Pro has, and I think Restaurant 365 is pretty
similar. Pretty similar. Yep.
So that's those are 2 components, like the Olo. Who else competes with Olo?
On the front end?
Yeah.
So there are 467 different online ordering companies in North America, according to Brizo Food Metrics. Yeah.
I don't know.
Isn't that insane?
But like, is there somebody who like we should be looking at as closely as Olo?
There is no other focused public company that's all that they do. But in terms of online ordering, I think that you see a lot of more of the holistic companies that offer online ordering as part of their offering. So Toast has online ordering, Empower Delivery has online ordering. The only other like real focused online ordering company that's gotten a lot of press would be Lunchbox. But there are literally 467 of them.
Right.
Chow Now would be another great example. They're not public, but they have pretty significant traction.
One platform, but we haven't even discussed, is your native website. So the ones that I have heard a lot about recently, I think Bento Box was the big one for a long time. They were kind of leading. Pop Menu emerged. Spot Hopper is another one that I see a lot of. Owner.com is another one. And then now the most recent one that's been on my radar is Dash Track.
I've not heard of them.
Dash Track's out of Arizona, Phoenix, and they're growing like crazy.
Interesting.
Do you have thoughts on those platforms?
Well, I think ultimately the online ordering and the restaurant websites will merge into one thing. right now they click over. And if you can imagine your retail experience, again, go back many, many, many years to when you were just a baby. You're a little bit younger, I think, but you would go to Nordstrom.com and it would actually be about like Nordstrom, the company, and like their investor relations. And then if you wanted to shop, you would click a button and it would take you to shop.nordstrom.com. Do you remember that? And that's kind of where restaurants
I never
are
shop
today.
at Nordstrom.
Well, any retail experience would have been like that. That's kind of where restaurants are today, where you go to a website, beautiful website that's about them and their brands and their food and their whatever. And then you click a separate button and you go to shop or order. And it's a subdomain that allows you to order. That, I think, over time will go away. It's starting to go away with the major brands. Certainly, you won't see it because they're doing custom builds. I think it will start to go away for everyone.
I have found that Pop Menu, Owner.com, and Spot Hopper are more rigid platforms in the sense of like they're optimized for you, like SEO discovery. You're on my website now, and we're trying to create a path of least resistance to discovered to purchasing.
Yes.
Whereas Dash Track is more focused on full service. They have online ordering, but they're more about like what digital experience do you want to create and giving their client more
choice,
choice of like, what, like, do you want to create an online experience? Like, are you trying to promote events? Like if you're not like just trying to get people to order from your QSR or your fast casual and you're like trying to like be more intimate. I don't know. Things like that. It's a very weird world out there.
It is very complicated. It's very complicated. And I think this probably speaks to what you're doing and why you're doing it this way. But I think a lot of restaurant people rely on recommendations and what their peers in the industry are doing because it is so complicated and there are so many choices.
Word of mouth is still king, but it's hard for that word of mouth to ring over all the review. I mean, it's just, I feel like all these tech companies are trying to compete with the most trusted way of marketing, which is word of mouth. It's all about trying to own the message, own the narrative, own the influence. And I'm trying to combat that, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, that's the best way to do it is talk to restaurateurs and find out what works for them.
Right. Anything we haven't discussed up to this point? I mean, I can keep on going, but we are at our 2-hour mark.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
In terms of when I got here, but I'll keep going if there's more you want to talk about. Because
that's good. I think I would obviously appreciate everyone out there buying both books. The first book that we talked about last time is the why all of these things are changing.
Yeah, history too, which is really interesting.
And a lot of history. Yeah. Yep. It is Delivering the Digital Restaurant. Your roadmap to the future of food. And then the second book is really more the how. And this is the one with the steps on the path to digital maturity, both called Delivering the Digital Restaurant, both different subtitles.
Yeah, I will say, I'll go on record to say that this book, it's a 4-hour listen. It's about almost like 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm looking at it right now. So it's a lot of information packed into a very efficient delivery mechanism. It's not a lot of fluff. It's like, here's what you need to know.
Yes. No, not a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
The most fluff in there probably is a little vignette at the beginning of every chapter that gives you a story of either a consumer or restaurateur to help understand why this particular set of facts are important. Yeah.
One thing I did want to bring to the conversation that I was hoping would come out organically, but I'm going to pull it to the front, is dynamic pricing. You spend, I think, in the holistic section, or is it the
very last chapter.
Yeah. What do we need to know about dynamic pricing? I think that's a really important conversation.
Well, I would say first, it's been happening in restaurant for a very long time, right? We've had happy hours forever on slow times, slow days. It's been happening forever that we'll have specials. And it is certainly happening on the platforms already today. So I don't know if you ever had this experience, but say you go to DoorDash on a Friday night at 7:00 to place your order. They'll say, hey, do you want to save $2 if you wait till 8:00 for it to be delivered? That's dynamic pricing. And I think the question is not, should we have dynamic pricing or not in the restaurant industry? We already do. The question is, how do we do it better?
Right.
And how do we do it in a way that seems fair to consumers, that they understand? right? And I think any consumer would say, yeah, I understand that at peak time, it's going to cost me full price. But if I wait until the drivers have less to do, DoorDash is willing to give me a deal. That makes complete sense to them, right? No one is saying, oh my gosh, that's surge pricing. It's terrible. I can't believe they're taking advantage of me. Now, if DoorDash did the opposite and they said, during peak time, if you want your food delivered to you, you have to pay $87, then we would all go, wait, that's too far. That's not fair.
I think $87 might be too far, but I don't think it's out of line to say, do you want priority during peak hours?
Well, they have started doing that now that they've started batching orders, which means multiple deliveries going out with a single driver, either from the same or different restaurants, but to different households. You can now pay as a consumer to get priority delivery, which means to be the first item that's delivered instead of, driving around in the car with the driver.
Yeah, like I first saw it with Talk. And are you familiar with Talk?
Mm-hmm.
So what they were doing was more for the four walls, full service reservation. Hey, do you want to eat on Friday at 7:30 or 8 o'clock? That's going to be a premium price because that's when we sell out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get the most ROI during that period because it's more valuable because there's more of a demand.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should be shameless about doing things like that.
It makes absolutely the most sense. And I think it happens all of the time already in the restaurant industry. The question is just, how can we do it in a smarter way? How do we do it digitally?
That's, I think, the exciting thing is the cool thing that the digital world unlocks is complete malleability, where we can literally, like, we were so rigid before, where it's like you come to our restaurant, you make a reservation, we hold the reservation, you don't show up, we'll shoot. We can't get that back, but the more we start thinking about this dynamic world, this malleable world we live in, that's what happens when you digitize. Is like, it's literally like, the wide world of creativity, like whatever you can dream up, you can make happen. And I think that puts a lot of power in the hands of restaurant owners who are so just notorious for operating a 1905 business model, where it's like, get out of that. Like, if you choose the one thing, if you choose to embrace digitizing your restaurant, it opens it blows the ceiling off.
Yeah. All of a sudden you can do so many things that you couldn't do before.
Right. So, in terms of dynamic, the ways you're seeing people use dynamic pricing in restaurants, so one example was, having, basically during peak hours, charging a premium and also offering a discount during non-peak hours. So it's the equivalent of a happy hour.
Yep, totally. Just smooth out your demand a little bit.
What else? How else are people using dynamic pricing?
Well, I think it is possible in theory to use dynamic pricing at the ingredient level, right? So you see this often with specials where a chef will say, oh my gosh, we have too much of this stuff, we need to get rid of it. They'll put it on special. That's the old school way of doing it. I think there could be new school ways of doing that as well. We have a shortage of this ingredient, so it's going to cost a little bit more. We have a lot of this ingredient, so it's going to cost a little bit less. That would be at the super dynamic level. But even think about, I used to own pricing at Taco Bell. Right. So big, giant company. The way that we would think about pricing is that we would review it, 3-4 times a year. Right. And we would go back and we would pull the latest information on cost of sales and do our menu pricing and see where we were on margins. And 3 or 4 times a year, we'd go review it. Well, now, if you have an inventory management system and you know exactly what you're paying every single time that carrot comes in the door, and you know how many carrots there are in that dish, you know exactly the cost of that dish every single time you sell it, you could actually change your prices more frequently, right?
I think that's the most obvious one is, as the market's changing, you should be, like, in real time, daily changing your cost, the cost of the food you're putting out.
And that's always been, again, going back to traditional restaurants, there's always been something called the market price, right? For really high end things like lobster or a really nice cut of meat. You would
for those
see
things
that
are super fluctuating,
that
right?
fluctuate a lot, right?
But down to the penny, you should be doing it. Especially that's what a digital restaurant will do for you. If you have a tool like Restaurant Systems Pro that has a purchasing thing that's tied to the general ledger, and as the cost of things are changing, and you have a costing element system put into it, recipe costing cards, it's all connected. So if the purchase price changes, it pushes to the costing, it pushes to like, and if you say, I want to make 15% profit, you know, it's a little more complicated than that, but you have the option to be dynamic and to make sure you're getting your profit and to be unapologetic about it. There's nothing wrong with getting your worth. And if customers give you a hard time about that, give them an education session.
Yeah, the best businesses are those where the customer is happy to exchange dollars for the thing you have to offer.
Right. I think the only other example I want to give with dynamic pricing is, again, I'll echo it, is Line Leap. Like, that's another example. If you can add value in the guest experience, if you can find a creative way to, like, maybe it's a VIP section, you should pay more for that, right? Maybe you don't want to spend 30 minutes waiting in line. You should pay a premium that goes to the house to skip that line.
Totally. And like, we are used to this as consumers in many areas of our lives, right? Hospitality, travel work this way. Why would restaurants not work this way?
Right. One more question for you, and we'll start wrapping it up. You talked about PDFs, menus being an issue, right? Are there any menu platforms out there doing it right, where they're creating a better menu experience?
What's a really interesting
I'm asking
question.
for a friend.
A better menu experience. What kind of restaurant is it? Is it a...
So I recently interviewed the founder of Know My Menu. She's actually based up in Los Angeles. Her name is Susan Abbott. She actually was one of the most recent episodes just before I got here, and she created this platform which basically lets people dive deep into the menu. So if you have maybe it's an illness like a food allergy, or maybe you just have like prioritize like your, again, to your point,
your food beliefs.
Yes, exactly. So now you can look to see, okay, so like I want to go to this restaurant, like, okay, here's their menu. Well, what's in their soup? What's what are the ingredients in that menu item? So you can drill down to the per ingredient level to see all the ingredients. You can even drill back to where you sourced it.
Yeah, amazing.
So that's what she's in the process of creating right now. And where's that market right now? Who else is doing anything similar to that?
I think that's amazing. I think in order to do that well, again, you need to have holistic technology where your inventory management is connected to your KDS and the production, and it's connected to your menu.
The costing recipe card, so you know the ingredients per menu item.
Correct.
Which is why I introduced her to Restaurant Systems Pro.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think those things all have to be connected, and I think increasingly they will be. Consumers demand that level of transparency.
But also, if you're a restaurant that caters to that type of if you put a lot of energy into sourcing your ingredients, and you're doing if you have really solid values to have good ingredients in your recipes, because that's important to you, put that front and center. Invest in the tools that let people know what you're doing. Like, you have to showcase it. That's your unique selling proposition. Yep. Meredith, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. I do want to just ask my closing questions before we say goodbye. I think we can squeeze them in. Who do you respect and admire in the industry? Who's somebody who you just think is doing it really well? Somebody who I absolutely need to interview to go learn from, to make an example of. If you can't just think of one person, give me many, because I know that you're
I might have to give you a few. So I think generally the people that I most admire and respect in the restaurant industry are placemakers and risk takers in that sense. My background, of course,
status quo challengers.
my background is restaurant development, right? And it is a really big deal to have the guts to take a couple of $1 million and put it into the ground and hope that people show up.
Oh my God,
right?
So scary.
And so when I think about the people I most admire who've done that successfully and made some really big bets, it's people like George Beale at Hillstone Restaurant Group, or Danny Meyer at Union Square Hospitality, Mike Cunningham at CRG, Rich Melman at Lettuce Entertain You.
These are some names.
Yeah, right. Right here in our neck of the woods, there's a man named Mario Marovich who runs the Lounge Group. And I don't know if you drove down this commercial street on the way over here, but there used to be nothing there, and now it's full of restaurants. And why? Because this man had the guts to go do it. Like, that's incredible, right? Also in Los Angeles now, Fox Restaurant Concepts was purchased by Cheesecake. Right?
Yes.
These are just amazing, creative people who somehow are pulling the experience, the place, the food all together into one complete package and putting it out there with the confidence that they know that consumers will love it. And I just think that's so cool.
That is cool. Thank you so much, Meredith. Again, the book, the most recent book, both start with delivering the digital restaurant. The first subtitle was
Your Roadmap to the Future of Food.
And the second subtitle, the most recent book, The Path to Digital Maturity.
That's right.
Absolute books that should be in your library if you're a restaurant owner. I really enjoy my conversations with you. And this is where I say, actually, how do we connect with you?
How do you connect with me? Well, the best place to find me is empower.delivery. I am the CEO at the software company, Empower Delivery, which is holistic software for delivery and convenience-oriented restaurants. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Meredith Sandland.
And what exactly do you do with Empower Delivery? One more time, just to make sure it's clear.
Yes. So Empower Delivery is an end-to-end order to fulfillment platform. So we do everything from taking in the orders via kiosk, first-party ordering, third-party order aggregation, however it might get into the system. We then do that conductor piece, that order management system, producing it through the kitchen and maximizing throughput in the kitchen, and then going out the back via fulfillment. We enable restaurants to have their own dedicated on-demand delivery fleets. So if they don't want to go through a third party and they want to do it themselves, they can do it with us.
Beautiful. Now is when I say there is no questioning, Meredith. You are unstoppable. Cheers.